welcome to Make Sense of Math. I am Michelle and I am so glad you are here today. Today I want to share a Pi Day activity that I would do with my middle school math students that not only was fun and engaging, but it was very effective in helping them to understand pi. And as we went later on through the year, I'd be like, remember that activity? And they would say, oh yeah, and they would remember how to calculate pi. So here are the materials that you're going to need for this activity. You're going to need 10 circular objects. The best way, I'll talk about this in a minute, but 10 circular objects. I went to my pantry and just pulled lids off of things. You're gonna need to have them be different sizes and, big, small, different sizes would work. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this, see how this changes circumference as it goes down? This is, I wouldn't use these unless you needed more. So students are going to be measuring the circumference and diameter of these objects. And if they're measuring the circumference here, you can't really measure the diameter there. So they'd have to measure the diameter here. And suddenly they're measuring two different circles. So if you're going to use objects like this, be very specific that, they're measuring their circumference at the top of the same place where they're measuring the diameter, or the bottom would also be fine. So you need 10 objects. I would number them. I would just, you could get little pieces of paper, number it 1 through 10, just tape them on the objects. You're going to need string that doesn't stretch. So like yarn, I would not use. This is actually ribbon and it's perfect because it doesn't stretch. And yeah, it's pretty tight. You're going to need a ruler or, like a meter stick if you have, or yardstick if you have bigger items. Make sure that it has centimeters on it. We're going to measure in centimeters because it's easier and get a little bit more accurate. And then you're going to want a data recording sheet. You can grab this one for free down. I'll put the link down in my description. You can download this. And yeah, that's what you're going to need. So to do this activity, I divided my class into groups of 4, and then they would each have a job in their group. They can decide amongst themselves who wants to do what, but one person's going to be the scribe, recording all the data on this sheet. One person's going to be the measurer of the diameter of the object, and one person is going to measure the circumference of the object. So that's why we're going to use the string to measure their circumference. So they're just going to mark it with their fingers, and then measure the length of this. And then one person is going to use the calculator. So they're going to write object number 1, write the circumference, write the diameter, and then they're going to write it as a ratio of the circumference over the diameter. And then the calculator person's going to calculate it, the circumference divided by the diameter, and write the answer here. Now, I think when I did this before, I did either 3 or 4 digits at this point, just for accuracy. I would recommend using centimeters. They are a lot easier to work with for students. You may or not, depending on your students, need to review, if it's 4 and 3 lines, that's 4.3 centimeters. But yeah, I would definitely use centimeters when doing this. So I would give divide them all up, give each student an object, have them rotate the objects around, give 2 or 3 minutes per object, just record, write your data, calculate it out, pass the object around, make sure they do all 10. Now, theoretically, you should only have to do this one time, right? If I take the circumference of an object and I divide it by the diameter, I should get pi exactly. Theoretically, that's what I should get. But this is a great way to talk to your students about error. We are measuring this, and it may look like 14 centimeters, and it may look like it's the middle of the circle, but it may not be exactly the middle, or it may not be exactly 14 centimeters, it may be 13.99 centimeters. Or, maybe when I was doing the circumference, it wasn't exactly straight around. And so, but this is real life. And so that's why we do a whole bunch of them, because it's going to be an approximation, and it's going to converge to pi. And so we do 10 per group. And then what we do as a class is we collect all, I group all the data as a class, and then we find the average of that data, and it'll actually even get closer to pi. If you teach more than one class, I also did this. I think I taught 3 or 4 at the same time, and I gathered all the data together and found the average, and it was so fun to see how close to the actual pi digit it was. If you've talked about probability, theoretical and experimental probability, this is a great way to tie that into it too, because like I said, theoretically, we should only have to do this once, and it will give me exactly pi, but this is like human error. We can't get things exactly when we're measuring with a ribbon and, approximating with centimeters. But the more data we gather, it's going to converge to that. So anyways, like I said, I will put this down in the description. I always teach conceptually before I teach fluency. So this is like the conceptual activity I do. And then to do it with fluency again, like to follow it up with a fluency, I have this fun activity. If your students also know how to find the area of circles, then they can do this. So this uses the circumference and area of circles with the radius and diameters, and they just calculate it out depending on what it's asking for. And then they color in this fun pie coloring page. Now I like to add little fun things like this because it encourages the students to complete the activity, and it kind of also engages them while doing it. So here's your conceptual activity, fluency activity. I can also put the link down this into the description. And if you try this in your classroom, will you let me know how it goes down in the comments? I found this to be one of my most effective lessons for teaching Pi. Anyways, thank you so much. Have a good one.